Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with Thomas Miller. Are you tired of your tweens, teens, and young adults' negative behaviors and poor choices holding you emotionally hostage, controlling your family, and ruling your life? Do you feel like you're riding an emotional roller coaster every time you walk into your house? If you answered yes, then you're in the right place. This podcast is a community for courageous parents just like you who come here to gain effective tools, skills, and learn concrete action steps that they can take to be more confident, calmer, and more empowered while parenting and changing their tween, teen, or young adult's life and improving their family's future. Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with your host, Thomas Miller. Before we jump into today's topic, I just want to say, oh my God, how great was last week. Big shout out again to Katie Greer. If you did not check it out, there's 2 episodes right before this one that is all about helping your kids better manage and navigate tech. It's all about helping us as parents be more effective to guide our kiddos in the digital world so they could be safer and more successful handling, oh my God, all the bells and whistles associated with tech. So hopefully you check that out. Today's topic comes from a parent, which I love. Again, if you haven't already signed up for the newsletter, the way to do that is in the description of the show. You can sign up for the newsletter, get so many tips, tools, and strategies right to your inbox. But today's topic is performance anxiety. How do you help your kiddos manage performance anxiety? So I love that, again, this topic comes from a parent who emailed me. And so we're going to dive in over 2 episodes. First one's going to be kind of take a macro look at how did we get here, right? Like, is it us? Is it kids? Is it society? Where is this all coming from? I'm going to start with a story. So the other day, I had a client in my office. He's a therapy client. I still see a few clients in my Newburyport office for therapy, but the majority of my day, of course, is running the Four Peaks Parents Program for parents all over the U.S. And so this kiddo has a 4.7. You heard that correct. 4.7 GPA, and that's now out of 5 people. For those who know, you know, right? We used to be at a 4.0. Us OGs out there, they now made it 5.0. He's got a 4.7, and this kid is literally like dying, like in terms of preparing for next year's application process to college. I mean, he's literally scared to death. And before you say this is first world's problems and all these other things, which on some level it is, but it's also an epidemic? What am I trying to say? It's also it also emanates, I guess, from our society, right? We are so hardwired right now as a society to be focused on performance, right? The application process to college. Maybe I'll have a college admissions counselor on here in the future, and they could try to help us discern and navigate, like, what, if any, I don't know, logic, algorithm, whatever. I have no idea how they even decide these things. But all I know is I have many teens that I either have provided therapy to and still currently do, or many a parent that I coach, of course, through the Four Peaks Parents Program, that have kiddos that are going to lose their mind if, they don't get into this college or that college, because the process is so insane. And as a society, we've really shifted away from effort toward results or toward outcome. We're praising, as a society, outcomes. We are not helping our kids feel valued or feel good about their effort. Their entire identities are tethered toward outcomes and results. Think if you work in corporate, which I'm sure many of you do, right? You got KPIs, key performance indicators. You have OKRs, right? Objective and key results. Metrics. Everything is metrics, right? Nowadays. You're only as good as your results, right? I'm sure all of you have heard that. So the same now is trickling down, right? And our kids are bathing in that same outcome-driven culture. So what do we do about it, right? We have an opportunity as parents to kind of grab hold of this wheel and build our own family culture that has more of a fail-forward feel to it, right? Because we want our kids to feel good about their effort. We want our kids to feel good about their commitment, their dedication, less so about the result. I mean, you really can't live on that cyclical roller coaster of I had a good game, I'm good. I had a poor game, I suck, right? You can't live like that. That's not sustainable. Kobe Bryant actually has talked about that. So many great, things online that you can see of Kobe Bryant talking about the Mamba mentality. And Mamba mentality is not necessarily about him dropping 52 points in a game. It was more about this idea of having an abundance mindset or a warrior mindset or a gritty mindset, right? It wasn't, again, tethered to, I have a Mamba mentality only when things go well. So we're going to really look at kind of some macro factors. And then in the second episode, we're going to dive into like, what do we do as parents, right? How do we, again, change this narrative? How do we shift things? You got to also understand that, when a child experiences performance anxiety, their brain triggers the fight or flight response. That's really what's going on. They're just going through stress. And it makes sense, right? If you're called up in front of the class, particularly if you have ADHD or processing speed difficulty, your executive functioning is going to go offline. I mean, anxiety is going to trigger your executive functioning to go offline. You're not going to be in the PFC, the prefrontal cortex, and really going to be making sound judgments at that moment, right? You have to understand that kids, particularly tweens, teens, and young adults, right? The social stock has gone up. They care a lot about how they look, right? Amongst their peers, amongst their friends. And so they don't want to look bad, right? They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being negatively evaluated. If someone actually has social phobia, that's a true medically necessary diagnosis from DSM-5. It used to be called social anxiety disorder. That has nothing to do with them being afraid of people or afraid of social situations per se. They're really afraid of being negatively evaluated or negatively judged or not performing well in those social/public scenarios. So we got to understand there's a lot of neuroscience going on, right? When they're going through that fight or flight, their amygdalas are signaling danger, right? They think there's a freaking like pterodactyl or, T-Rex, that's going to eat them alive, even though there's no real threat, right? Whether that's a dance recital, whether that's asking someone out, whether that's speaking in front of the class, whether that's soccer, lacrosse, whatever, could be a robotics event, whatever it is, debate team. They're perceiving this as a life-threatening event. Same thing going back to that client who's sitting in my office freaking out like his life is on the line because he's learning more and more about some of these schools and their acceptance rates of, oh my God, 11% or 12%. And just the standards of these schools, these colleges I'm talking about, are insane. In-state, out-of-state, this or that. Oh my God, there's a bazillion and one factors. It's like trying to push a camel through an eye of a needle. And he, unfortunately, is putting so much freaking pressure on himself, right? And trying to contort himself like a contortionist into whatever this little box is that said school, right, even has, which no one even definitively knows, right? They have certain things, of course, that are some standards. But again, how do you decide, right, how you take this student over that student? So you got to understand our kids when they're faced with something that seems benign or simple to us, like just go play, like go play lacrosse, go, right? Go play football, go, you have a dance thing. Okay. You got a talent show, whatever. It leads to physical symptoms. Their heart might be racing. They might be sweating, right? And that PFC, which we know is not even fully formed until the late 20s, particularly in males, a little younger in females, it's not really fully able to, judge and reason and rationalize that, okay, this is going to be a challenging night, but it's not, again, life-threatening. So again, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of our kids to recognize they're going through a really challenging thing. And again, let's remember our society, as we've talked about already in this podcast, values measurable success. I mean, we're so crazy about, again, everything being outcome driven. Why do you think our kids have performance anxiety? Again, we're always talking about outcomes. We're always talking about performance. We're always ranking, rating, judging, evaluating, right? And they're identity, if we're not careful, is going to be 100% tied to their performance. What a shame. What a shame to, right? Step on the scale, I'm a piece of crap. Step on the scale, I'm great, right? I can do this or that, mile. I get it. Listen, I coach at a super high level of soccer. My kids play at academy level. I get it. There's levels to this game. There's nothing wrong with a kid understanding where they are in their own athletic journey, academic journey, whatever. There are levels to this game. I'm not a big fan of everyone wins a trophy at all. We can have an adaptive sports team that allows for kids who are neurodivergent to participate, which is wonderful, wonderful. And again, that kid participating on that neurodivergent team and not running off the field, or a kid who might be have social anxiety or might have OCD or might have whatever mental health thing going on, depression, and for them to jump in a pool, let's say, and participate in a swimming class, that is their Mount Everest. So we need to understand and praise that. So again, this is not about lowering standards. I'm not at all a fan of lowering standards, but this is really about shifting our internal family culture away from outcome and toward effort, and helping our kids to understand that their identity should be tethered and tied more toward their effort than toward the outcome. Because if we want gritty kids, if we want resilient kids, right, we have to help them understand that there are way more sustainable markers or metrics than purely how they performed on a Sunday or on that test, right? Again, not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we need to bring, I think, a more balanced perspective, right, into our homes and definitely with our kids. So it makes sense, right, that kids are feeling super crummy and crappy about themselves when they can't perform. Particularly, which we got into obviously last two episodes with Katie, but particularly in this world of social media where comparative analysis runs rampant. Everything is me against said kid, right? Me juxtaposed against this person or that person. And the level of exposure that our kids are getting vis-a-vis social media about so and so, whether in another country even, right? What is so and so doing or that, the vanity metrics, et cetera, everything is ostensibly a mirror for how they are not succeeding at a high level, right? So again, we really need to shift the conversation toward effort rather than outcomes. So how do we do it, right? Like, okay, you're like, great, cool. How do we do it, Thomas, right? So we have to emphasize dedication and hard work that our children put into a process versus merely a result. My son Phoenix is like a half baker, half chemist. And let's just say over the years, we have enjoyed some of his baking, and let's just say we have spit out a bunch of his baking. And it's hard in those moments as a parent to suspend disbelief when he is going way, way off the ingredients list and kind of dabbling in his own thing. And there's definitely been tons of things that had way too much baking soda or way too much flour or not enough eggs or too many eggs, and we're gluten-free. So, the gluten-free cookies definitely crumble. I get to make gluten-free jokes because I'm gluten-free, right? So the struggle is real, right? But again, like that's a perfect example of effort versus outcome. My same kiddo has 3 ginormous terrariums in his room, and he's built those from scratch. And he has 4 frogs, 2 Australian white frogs and 2 Vietnamese mossy frogs. If I have any, terrarium nerds out there, big shout out, much love to y'all. Love me some terrariums. It's been such a cool process. And along the way, 2 previous frogs didn't make it. And that's part of life. And that's a whole other episode we could talk about helping your kids grieve, because that's a really healthy part of their growth and coping skills journey. But again, it's a process. It's a process. It's not about like, why is this not perfect? It's like, how do we get there? And again, encouraging, right? And helping our kids realize that winning isn't an immediate outcome and that we win throughout the process as long as we keep going and keep getting up and keep failing forward. So again, right, really shifting that dialogue away from the outcome and toward the effort. It reduces pressure, right? Allows them, your kiddos, to appreciate themselves and also appreciate the growth process. You know how many kids I work with over the years that are trying to like reverse engineer how they get into whatever college or whatever thing? And look, I get it, right? We as parents are tethered at times to those outcomes, proud parent of blah, 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 right? We think if our kid gets into this or that school, right, their lives are dynamically or dramatically different than if they go to X school. I would say more on the no side. I mean, if our child is 100% taking ownership of their journey and 100% all in on that effort and that dedication and on their growth process, I'll take that kid over a kid that is a bot trying to get into bot university to go do bot things, right? Where they're a shell of themselves. But I get it, right? That again, kids that are working really hard, again, they're working really hard, right? And they have those aspirations. Beautiful thing, beautiful. Not again about kids not having aspirations for Ivies or elite colleges. More big up to them, but they have to understand that the journey is bigger than that outcome. Whether they get into that college or not, for me, that's less important than did they do the best they could and learn from their mistakes and try again, right? And effort again and again and again. And if they're mired in dust and sweat, and at the end of the day they get in, beautiful. If they don't get in, I still think that kid is a resilient, gritty kid because they had a goal, they had an aspiration, they worked hard, they tried to put themselves in that best position to be accepted. And so again, we can shift the narrative, we could celebrate the efforting, right? When we do that, it helps children build a growth mindset. We hear all the time about these things like grit and growth mindset and da da da, but we don't really do it. And in the second part, I'm going to call you all out, myself included, because it starts with us. Like we have to be okay with our kids failing forward, and we have to be willing to let go. I mean, this doesn't just happen. You don't go to Walgreens and get like the gritty kid vitamin, on aisle 7 or CVS, right? It doesn't happen like that. We can't airdrop it. We can't auto ship it. We can't, get it from Amazon Prime. It is a long-term journey, right? It's a slow train coming, that grit and that resiliency. And it starts with when they're young. So again, how do we reduce, right, the fear of failure? How do we help them view challenges as normal? How do we champion this perspective that, guess what? We're in this for the long haul. We're not in this for the if this, then that. We're not in this for, ooh, I've arrived, right? There's so many entrepreneurs that I've worked with over my career that, of course, they've been a part of the Four Peaks Parents Program who are uber successful and their kids are struggling. And part of that is because in their origin story, they had to push through a bazillion barriers, challenges. And then unfortunately, which is a mistake that a lot of families make who arrive at a place of success, they just bequeath all of this, right, gifts, this entitlement, if you will, onto their children. And now they're in a process where you can't shelter your kids from your successes, right? And the wealth that you've acquired and the affluence that you have and the comforts of your life. And you're in this catch-22, and it's a balancing act because you have and you deserve through your earned efforting, right? The accoutrements of your lifestyle. And there's no way to shield your child from bathing in that. But we can absolutely ask that kid to do hard. We can absolutely not remove every speed bump from that child. We can absolutely, as parents, not helicopter. And we can promote resiliency and foster grit and determination or determinism in that child. Because again, it's a sustainable culture that we want. We don't want an instant gratification culture that, again, is all about effort. It's all about outcome. So a couple quick things, right? If your kiddo is freaking the heck out tomorrow, right, about this or that thing that's happening, the presentation, the game, the whatever, right? We have an opportunity to normalize, like, you're feeling these feelings. Like, that's okay. Like, have these feelings, feel these uncomfortable feelings. These are just precursors, right, to that challenge or that event. It's anticipatory anxiety, right? We can normalize as well how we're feeling, right? That's why the second peak of the Four Peaks Parents Program is called emotional mastery, Because if we're not managing our emotions, they're managing us. And so often the families that I work with are like, why is my kid freaking out, right? Why aren't they just emotionally regulated? Meanwhile, they're freaking dysregulated. They're either numbing out, or they're reacting to every little thing, or they're, enmeshed and codependent. And so they're not doing a good job managing their own emotional package. And then they're trying to now create shift for their child. So a couple of quick little things is a good little precursor into the next episode, is to shift your kid's mindset on failures and mistakes, right? It's almost like we have to do PR for failures and mistakes, right? These are good things. These are stepping stones, right? These are things that we want to happen. We almost can pull them toward us, not that we're trying to purposely mistake or fail, but that we shouldn't have an immediate aversion to it, right? We want to shift and change that fight or flight response, right? We want to teach our kids grounding skills, which in the next episode I'm going to get into and give you a whole bunch of things that you could do in real time on the way to the game, on the way to school. But again, first and foremost, let's take a bigger, broader, more objective stance on our kids' failings, right? When they're failing, when they're going through it, right? To the degree to which we can have what I call emotional insularity, meaning imagining almost a layer of insulation between us and our child. Not that we're detached, but that we can witness and observe versus go through exactly the same parallel process. It will be helpful for them to be able to play handball against us if we're a more solid wall while they're kind of wigging out, right? And they're kind of getting wonky, and we can be able to help them see themselves. So again, the key takeaways for today is we want to shift our family culture. We want to shift the dynamics. We want to shift the conversations away from outcomes and toward effort. We want to constantly catch our kids striving, working hard, right? Being dedicated to the process. Yes, we need to normalize they are baked in a world of outcomes and, again, measured metrics that exists. At the end of the day, if you firmly believe, and that's fine if that's your family culture, that if your child gets into BC or Harvard, they're set for life. If that's, again, what someone wants, if that's what your child wants, more power to them. Why not reach for the stars, right, and hit the moon? But we want to make sure they are feeling really good about the habits of that process, more so than, again, being overly identified with the outcome. Because I see kids in my office and have seen kids or treated kids for 23 years who have lived and died based on the outcome, and literally have, of course, engaged in self-injurious behavior, have built super harsh, punitive self-talk that really gave birth to an inner bitch or an inner critic that ran roughshod all over them and sat on their shoulders and created so much anxiety and pressure and robbed them of a sense of self-esteem, and not only kept them from trying that new class or that new course or that new hobby or that new club because they didn't think that either looked better on the resume, or they didn't think or know that they were going to get a perfect grade on it, right? They opted out of an experience that might have enhanced and expanded their life solely because it wasn't in keeping with conferring the outcome that they wanted. What a sad, 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 sad way to live life, right? That's too stringent of a way to navigate as a child that's developmentally inappropriate and robs them of joy. So in the next episode, we're going to get more tactical and dive into some do's and don'ts and things that you can do in real time if and when your kids are presenting anxiety, so you can help them manage their anxiety on and off the soccer pitch, on and off the football field, on and off the dance floor or dance stage, I suppose, or on and off, whatever stage, there or thing that, they're engaging in where their anxiety is cropping up. So again, change the narrative today. Begin to focus on effort. Stay away from outcome. Normalize, yes, they live in an outcome world. Validate, of course, how they feel when they didn't achieve said outcome. Don't immediately try to pull them out of feeling uncomfortable and rationalize why it's no big deal, but help slowly but surely. It's like kneading the dough. Move them, right, a little bit more laterally, put on that wider lens and begin to think about, I want to be a sustainable, gritty, resilient person who efforts really well rather than someone who's only fixated on outcomes. All right, you could do this. Appreciate y'all. Again, sign up for the newsletter so you can get effective tips, tools, strategy right into your inbox. Thank you so much. And if you have any other topics you want to hear, please hit me up. All right, I'll see you in the next episode. Be well. Bye. Hey everyone, Thomas here. First off, it means the world to me that you took the time to listen to my podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Also, if you want to receive the latest podcast updates, as well as expert parenting tips and practical strategies for navigating your tween, teen, or young adults' challenges directly to your inbox, then sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. And most importantly, if you're tired of feeling overwhelmed, stuck, stressed, and are losing sleep because you're constantly worried about your tween, teen, or young adult, your first step is to realize that you still have a choice and can do something about it. I'm ready to help you take action and create the results you desire today. Just go to 4peaksparents.com and book a free strategy call. Let's do this. Last thing, while you were listening to this show, who was the one person that you thought could really benefit from hearing it? Please share it with them.